sick and tired, living in a town filled with narrow minds and hate. They used to laugh at me, their children called me names. I would run and hide, feeling so ashamed just for being born. I was just a boy, punished for a crime that was not mine. Life ain't so easy when you're a ghetto child. Oh baby, life ain't so easy when you're a ghetto child.
And I am hoping that you are spreading comfort by giving comfort to other people. I am so glad to be here to be able to talk to you. But I would like a little feedback sometimes. I've gotten feedback out in the community, but I would like a little feedback sometime from what what are your thoughts about the show? And like I said, the feedback does not have to be agreeing with me because we can agree without being disagreeable. We don't have to see eye to eye to walk hand in hand, and everyone is able to express themselves in a positive way. So if I could have a little audience participation, that would be great. I have been talking about my book, Inspired by Autism. The book, I'm very proud of this book, and it was a labor of, it was kind of a mission for me to write this book. But this book is not a success story. In the autism community, a success story is when the person with autism can live in the community, work in the community, be independent. So my son is still not doing those things. He is 42. He still can't read or write or talk. And he can't live independently. So we are not considered a success story. But his father, Purvis Jackson, who was the bass singer of the Spinners, pushed me to write the book because he said every autism story is not a success story. So we need some true stories of things that went on in our life. And I went through a lot of depression, which is one of the reasons for the book. I went through a lot of depression and upset about my son's condition. But I also learned a lot from him. I learned a lot of things from him that I didn't think he would be able. I didn't think I'd ever learn anything from him. But because of him, I grew up. When he came along, I thought I was grown. I had raised children. I had a college degree. But he sent me back to growing. So because of him, I had to continue to grow. And because of this child, I learned about unconditional love. Unconditional love. He loves me no matter how much my clothes cost, no matter what my bank account is, no matter no matter how my hair looks. Did you take a shower? He taught me about unconditional love, and so I'm so grateful for that because a lot of times we love with conditions. We don't say we love with conditions, but it's, well, when you get a job and when you clean your room and how are your grades, and it feels like we're loving with conditions. With him, there is none of that. So I learned about unconditional love. I also learned about tuning out things that are worthy of being tuned out. He is not worried about bills. He is not worried about wardrobe. He is not worried about love life. None of these things bother him. And I learned from him that sometimes you can tune out things because I was a worrier. I worried about everything. Well, he worries about nothing. And they say about worry that half of the things you worry about never happen anyhow, and the things that happen, you didn't know they were going to happen, so you didn't worry about them. I never worried about having a child with a handicap, so that came true for me. Also, because of him, I became brave enough to get out and speak for him and for other people like him. He can't talk. He can't give his side of the situation. And many people, like my son, aren't able to. We started the Purvis Foundation because of people like my son. And like I say, wealthy people, they can send their children to camp. They can pay for treatment. They can do all the things that the Purvis Foundation does for lower income parents. I have seen the both sides of the situation. I know what the wealthy people can do, and then I know what the people who aren't wealthy can do. So the Purvis Jackson Jr. Autism Foundation, it's on the internet, pjjraf.org, helps lower income children with handicaps and disabilities. We don't just specify autism, we help all disabilities. So though we are not a success story, I do want the Purvis Foundation to be a success story. And my book is called Inspired by Autism. It took me 30 years to use the word inspired. I was always depressed by autism, upset by autism, overwhelmed by autism. What am I going to do? I never thought I'd get to the point where I would say, I am inspired by autism. And I am still inspired by autism, which is the reason I'm doing a TV show. And I'm also doing a radio show. I realize that in life, I am one of the more fortunate. I was blessed to have a lot of the things that equate with success. But my son is one of the less fortunate. And many people like him. So once you have seen the less fortunate, doesn't God want those of us who are more fortunate to help with the less fortunate? So I decided that I was able to help with the less fortunate. And I am blessed to be able to do this. And the guiding scripture for the Purvis Jackson Foundation is Matthew 25:40. That which ye do for the least of my brethren, you do it also unto me. And that is our guiding principle. And I am blessed to be able to help the less fortunate. Some other scriptures that are comforting to me, hopefully they're comforting to you, is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans for hope for the future. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans for hope for the future. Isaiah 43:19 is, behold, I do a new thing. Shall you not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Now, doing a new thing, our political situation is so troubling now to most of us, but maybe God is about to do a new thing. Maybe our situation will improve, but we have to have hope. Romans 8:24-25 says, for we are saved by hope. But hope seen is not hope. For what a man or a woman seeth, what does he yet hope for? But if we hope for that we seeth not, then we do with patience wait for it. And I remember when I lived without hope, and it was extremely difficult for me. So living without hope is what keeps you unenergized. So once you get hope, and I have hope, I had hope that my son could be cured. But when I found out he couldn't be cured, I had to change my way of thinking, which, thanks to Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, who says your attitude is more important than your the whatever your fact of life is, your attitude about that fact of life is more important than the fact itself. So I had to change my attitude about the fact of autism, which was extremely difficult. But there were a lot of writers and speakers that I listened to that helped me make that change. I'm going to take a short break. When we come back, I'm going to talk some about remembering the 20 grand and a couple of other things. Uh, Hello to the people at Mount Vernon Missionary Baptist Church, where I am a deacon. If you're looking for a place to go some Sundays, come to Mount Vernon. It's a block north of 8 Mile and a block west of Wyoming. Until then, I'm going to take a short break, and I will be back in a minute.
When I was 17, I ran away from home and from everything I had ever known. I was sick and tired, living in a town filled with narrow minds and hate. They used to laugh at me.
Thank you for sticking with me on A Spoonful of Comfort. My theme song, Life Ain't So Easy When You're a Ghetto Child, it also resonates with me because life ain't so easy when you're a handicapped child. And the lyrics to the song that say, they used to laugh at me, the children called me names, I would run and hide, feeling so ashamed just for being born. I was just a child punished for a crime that was not mine. Life ain't so easy when you're a ghetto child. Life ain't so easy when you're a handicapped child. And we experienced all of that. But my son did not realize he was being ridiculed and shamed. I knew, and it hurt me. So Ghetto Child by the Spinners has always resonated with me, and that's the feeling that I had about my son as he was growing up. My son was born in 1975. There were very few people with autism then, so it was very misunderstood. It mystifies me as to how uh, the diagnosis has grown so much since we're living in such a time of accomplishment and wonderful things happening. It just amazes me that something like autism is still a mystery. I want to talk to you. I've talked to you about Inspired by Autism. I want to talk to you about another book. This book is Sassy, Classy, and Still Sparkling. I did not write this book, and I'm not trying to sell this book because I think it's out of print also. But Sassy, Classy, and Still Sparkling was a book by the Red Hatters organization, of which I was a member of the Red Hatters. And there is something that I wrote that's included in this book, and it's called Too Young to Be Old. And it's the story of how when I realized I was old, I didn't want to be old, not yet. So I'm too young to be old. So I'll share that story with you one day. But the Red Hatters, we were celebrating life after the age of 50. And it was women, and we wore purple outfits and red hats and had a lot of activities to help women over the age of 50 with their aging process, to age having fun and celebration. Because I am old enough now that I want to celebrate life. I have been blessed enough to be to the point where I want to celebrate life. Life is a celebration. life can be a celebration. Now, of course, I didn't always feel that way. And of course, I went through a lot of times in life that weren't a celebration. But now, from the vantage point of old age, I see that life is a celebration. And we're not ever going to have everything going 100% smooth, because that's not what life is. Another scripture, Ecclesiastes 3, says that to everything there is a season, a time to laugh, a time to cry, a time for war, and a time for peace. To everything there is a season. So when my season of sadness came and I didn't handle it very well, it was a season. It did not last forever. So we never go through life with everything being smooth and easy and wonderful. But we can adjust. You can adjust. I can adjust. Our spirits are able to adjust to whatever the situation is. And it took me a long time to learn that fact, but I'm so glad that I did finally learn that fact. I wanted to talk to you about the 20 grand reunion. I had mentioned the 20 grand reunion, but I hadn't mentioned it for a while because a very important person, Lamont Robinson, who's the founder of the Rhythm and Blues Music Museum Hall of Fame, is having a 20 grand Greystone Arcadia roller rink. He's having a reunion on April the 7th. So I had to move my reunion back. So my 20 grand reunion is going to be August the 11th at Burt's Warehouse. And I will talk about it more as time goes on. Remembering the 20 grand. During the 20 grand's heyday, which was in the 60s and 70s, it was the mecca for every entertainer that came from New York, California. Everybody came to the 20 grand. And the 20 grand was a destination. The 20 grand was not just a club. It had a 20-lane bowling alley and a snack bar, and it had a lounge. This was all on the lower level. There was the bowling alley, the fireside lounge, and the snack bar. And then upstairs, there was the Gold Room, which was a ballroom. And at the Gold Room, they had cabarets every Saturday where people brought their own bottle. Then there was the Driftwood Lounge. And the Driftwood Lounge is where the big name entertainers performed. And entertainers like Chuck Jackson, Joe Tex, Marvin Gaye, the Temptations. These are some of the entertainers that had people lined up for 2 blocks to come in and see the show. And during that time, you could see a wonderful show for $5. The entertainers that performed at the 20 grand had to perform 3 shows a night for 10 nights in a row. I don't know of any entertainers that work that hard nowadays. The 20 grand days, that was before Facebook and Twitter and cell phones. So its history hasn't been really documented. But the 20 grand was a very important part of the history of Detroit. The 20 grand was located on 14th and Warren, which it's long gone, but we want to remember the 20 grand. And for the 20 grand reunion, we're going to recognize some of the people who frequented the 20 grand, who were really kind of like the heartbeat of the 20 grand. We're going to have recognition for 20 grand ladies. We're going to have recognition for 20 grand men, Miss 20 grand ladies and Mr. 20 grand men. We're also going to have a show that's going to be a tribute to Motown. And we're going to have a lot of things going on. Of course, this is in the future, August the 11th, and I will be keeping you posted on what's going on. But if there's anybody who's still watching who used to attend the 20 grand and you have a good 20 grand story, I'd love for you to be on the show and tell me what your 20 grand story is. If you're watching, call in and let me know that you used to attend the 20 grand. When I said we're going to have a 20 grand reunion, one of my daughters said, well, aren't they all dead? And I said, no, there are a lot of us that are still living. So those of us who are still living, we need to have an event to remember the 20 grand. When I have the event, I'm going to have it filmed. We're going to film it so that we will have a record of our 20 grand history, because that's some history that shouldn't be lost. The older I get, the more I become aware of documenting things so that it won't get lost. Sometimes I feel like I'm whistling in the wind, but I still feel that I have to whistle. So hopefully you will call in either today or next week and tell me that you used to patronize the 20 grand and tell me a 20 grand story and how things have changed. Everything has changed. The publishing industry has changed. The music industry has changed. The going out, the clubbing industry has even changed. But back during the 20 grand days, I'd say that was kind of the golden age of going out. And the 20 grand was one of the golden places in the city of Detroit that people looked forward to a night out at the 20 grand. So 20 grand reunion, it's going to be in August. It's going to be at Bert's Warehouse. I will be keeping you posted about the 20 grand. In keeping with my theme of this show about comfort, I want to read a poem to you. I've read it to you before, but it bears repeating, called Don't Quit. This poem has inspired me many times, and it inspires me now. I don't just read it for you, I read it for me. I need to be reminded of this. Don't quit. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, and the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when cares are pressing you down a bit, rest if you want, but don't you quit. When the funds are low and the debts are high and you want to smile but you have to cry, when cares are pressing you down a bit, rest if you want, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, and many a person turns about when they might have won if they'd stuck it out. Don't give up, though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. And often the goal is nearer than it seems to a faint and faltering man or woman. Often the struggler has given up when he might have captured the victor's cup. And he learned too late when the night came down how close he was to the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint in the clouds of doubt. And you never can tell how close you are. It might be near when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when your heart is hit. It's when things seem wrong that you must not quit. That was one of my husband's theme songs. The Spinners were singing for 20 years before they got a hit record. And there were many times that I wanted him to quit, but he refused to quit. So I learned, do not quit. I'm going to share one of my poems with you from my book, Inspired by Autism. This is He Who Holds the Future. And this is my inspiration, because sometimes the future can be frightening, but we have to remember that God is also in the future. He who holds the future. When storms are raging round me and I'm drowning in quicksand and unhappy things are happening, things that I don't understand, when I don't know what else to do, I'll just do what I can, because he who holds the future, he also holds my hand. I know that God is with me every step of the way. If he brought me to it, he'll bring me through it. So in his care, I'll stay. And I will face my future according to his plan, because he who holds the future, he also holds my hand. That is something that I have lived. I know that God is watching out for me. The times that I thought he had left me, it's like the footprint story. I don't know if you remember the footprint story, where the man had the dream and he was walking along the beach and he saw two sets of footprints. One set was his and one set was Jesus, and it was his whole life in footprints. And there was a time when there was only one set of footprints. And he said, well, Lord, when I was at my lowest, where were you? Your footprints aren't there. And the Lord said, it was then that I was carrying you. So there are times that he's carrying us, and we don't even realize it. So it's about time for me to go. I'm hoping that you will tune in to the wonderful WHPR. I so greatly appreciate R.J. Watkins and Henry Tyler for all they have done here with this station, giving us, the community, a voice to speak out. So 1:30 Tuesdays, WHPR TV 33 for a spoonful of comfort. And until next time, may the power of God protect you. May the presence of God watch over you. And may the love of God enfold you. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at Jackson Claudine at sbcglobal.net, or the Purvis Jackson website, which is pjjraf.org. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to me. It's always a pleasure having a conversation with you, but it's not a conversation because it's one-sided. So when you start calling in, it'll be a conversation because it'll be both of us talking, and I'll be getting feedback. But until next time, please remember to share a spoonful of comfort. This is Claudine Jackson. I'll be with you next Tuesday at 1:30 here on WHPR. Thank you so much for tuning in.
When I was 17, I ran away from home and from everything I had ever known. I was sick and tired, living in a town filled with narrow minds and hate. They used to laugh at me, their children called me names. I would run and hide, feeling so ashamed just for being born. I was just a boy, punished for a crime that was not mine. Life ain't so easy when you're a ghetto child. Oh baby, life ain't so easy when you're a ghetto child. No one tried to understand. Papa did the best a man could do. A child's reality is paid for by his folks' fancy fairy tale, or bought and sold by those who can well afford time to make believe. Child